The galaxy was a vast expanse of stars and countless civilizations, each more advanced and mighty than the last. For millennia, humans had been but a fleeting whisper within that great orchestra, rarely heard, often forgotten, and eventually ignored. At the edge of the Andromeda sector, the last remaining traces of human existence clung to an uncharted world, known only as Obsidian. The planet was a cold, desolate place, its surface marred by ancient ruins and the echoes of a forgotten age. Its once proud cities were now little more than lifeless husks, a testament to the power of galactic empires that had long since wiped away all traces of humanity's legacy. The Council of the Galactic Ascendants, an alliance of the galaxy's most powerful and technologically advanced species, had decreed that humanity, in all its hubris, was a threat to the balance. The human empire had risen far too quickly and with too much force. It had been deemed an anomaly, an outlier, a problem to be eradicated. In the end, humanity was cast into the depths of space, isolated and forgotten, erased from the records, exiled. But on Obsidian, a glimmer of hope still flickered. Caleb Blackstone stood at the threshold of the ancient facility, the wind howling through the shattered windows. His breath clouded the air, a reminder that he was no longer in the safe, breathable confines of the human colonies. Obsidian's atmosphere was thin and frigid, its surface battered by unrelenting storms and the ravages of time. But to Caleb, it was home, a place of memories, of whispers, and of unspoken secrets. "Caleb!" a voice called, pulling him from his reverie. He turned to see Mara, his sister, standing at the edge of the ruined building. Her dark eyes scanned the horizon, her expression unreadable. "We're running out of time," she said, her voice steady but laced with tension. "We need to move forward." Caleb nodded, taking one last glance at the place that had once been their civilization's crown jewel. The structure before them had been built centuries ago, when humanity had still been a force to be reckoned with. Now it was nothing more than a ruin, a relic of the past. But buried beneath its crumbled foundations lay something of great importance, a forgotten technology, lost to time. It was their last chance. The story of humanity's downfall was etched into the very fabric of Caleb's being. He had heard the tales as a child, how the galactic Ascendants had brought their wrath upon the human colonies, how fleets of starships had descended from the heavens, obliterating entire worlds. Humanity had fought back, but the odds had been too great. And then came the final strike, the Exile Protocol. It had erased all records of humanity, sealing them away in the dark corners of space. But Caleb knew that the Exile Protocol had not destroyed everything. Some remnants of human technology had survived, hidden away in the forgotten corners of the galaxy. And on Obsidian, there was something buried beneath the ruins. A weapon, perhaps, or knowledge lost to the ages. That was why they had come. Mara, Caleb, and the last remnants of their people. As Caleb and Mara descended into the depths of the facility, the air grew thicker with dust, the ancient machinery groaning under the strain of centuries. The walls were covered in strange glowing symbols, remnants of a language long since forgotten. The flickering lights above cast eerie shadows, and every step Caleb took seemed to echo through the empty halls. Finally, they reached the heart of the facility, a massive chamber, its walls lined with dormant machines, relics of a time when humanity had been at its peak. In the center of the room, a pedestal stood, its surface etched with more of the strange symbols. "It's here," Mara said, her voice filled with awe. "This is it." Caleb approached the pedestal, his heart racing in his chest. His fingers brushed against the cool surface of the pedestal, and the symbols began to glow brighter, as if responding to his touch. The ground beneath them rumbled, and the air seemed to pulse with energy. A holographic display sprang to life, casting a soft blue light over the room. A series of schematics unfolded before them, detailing an advanced weapon, one capable of turning the tide of the war against the Ascendants. But as Caleb studied the schematics, his eyes narrowed. This wasn't just a weapon, it was something far more dangerous, something that could not only challenge the Ascendants, but perhaps even destroy them. It was an ancient human technology known as the Horizon device, a means of bending space and time itself. "What is it?" Mara whispered, her voice trembling with both fear and excitement. "It's not just a weapon," Caleb said, his voice low. "It's the key to something much bigger. The Ascendants never understood what they were dealing with when they exiled us. They thought they had eliminated us. But if we activate this device, we might be able to shift the balance of power back in our favor." "But we don't know how it works," Mara replied, her skepticism clear. "This technology is centuries old. We don't even have the knowledge to operate it." "We'll figure it out," Caleb said, determination creeping into his voice. "We have no choice." As they worked to activate the device, the ground began to shake violently, the walls trembling as if something deep within the planet was awakening. Caleb's heart pounded in his chest as he input the final command. The room was bathed in a blinding light, and for a moment, time seemed to freeze. A single thought flashed through Caleb's mind. This could either save them or doom them all. The light vanished, and for a moment, there was nothing. Then, with a deafening roar, the planet itself seemed to tremble in response. The device had activated. Outside, the winds howled, and the skies above Obsidian grew dark. Far above the planet, an ancient fleet of warships, long thought to have been destroyed, emerged from the depths of space. Humanity was not gone. The fight had only just begun. The exile protocol had failed, and the Ascendants would soon learn that humanity had never truly been erased. The vast expanse of space stretched out before them, the darkness punctuated only by the twinkling of distant stars. Caleb stared out of the viewport of their makeshift ship, a small vessel cobbled together from the wreckage of human technology left behind on Obsidian. Beside him, Mara worked feverishly at the controls, her hands moving with the precision of someone who had spent years navigating through the forgotten remnants of humanity's past. "Caleb, we have incoming," Mara said, her voice strained. "They're coming for us." It was the Ascendants. The moment the Horizon device had activated, a signal had been sent, one that resonated through the galaxy, reaching the farthest corners of space. It was a call, a beacon that no one could ignore. And now the Ascendants had noticed. A fleet of sleek, black ships descended upon them, their engines glowing with unnatural light. The Ascendants had always thought of themselves as the galaxy's true rulers, but now they were being forced to reckon with something they had long since written off as irrelevant: humanity. "Hold on!" Caleb shouted, grabbing onto the edge of his seat as the ship lurched forward, veering sharply to the left to avoid a barrage of laser fire. The Ascendant ships were faster, more advanced, and their weapons were devastating, but they had one thing the Ascendants didn't: human tenacity. The ship rocked again as a blast from a nearby ship struck their shields, sending sparks flying. Caleb gritted his teeth. This was it, the first real test, the first real battle. They had to survive. The battle raged on, a chaotic clash of technology and willpower. The Ascendants were relentless, their ships cutting through space like knives, each one seeking to bring them down. But Caleb and Mara weren't ready to give up. They had a mission. They had something far greater to fight for. As the battle unfolded, a sudden realization struck Caleb. The Horizon device wasn't just a weapon. It was a message, a declaration that humanity, despite the odds, would never be silenced. The cold darkness of space shimmered with the distant flashes of battle. Caleb's hands gripped the controls of their ship, his knuckles white from the strain. The ship groaned under the stress of constant fire, its hull dented and scorched, but it held together. Just. Mara worked beside him, her fingers dancing across the console as she analyzed the incoming data. "Shields are holding, but not for long. We can't keep dodging forever, Caleb." Caleb clenched his jaw. His mind raced, calculating their options as the Ascendant fleet closed in. Their enemy's ships were agile, their weapons precise, and their tactics ruthless. They were the galaxy's dominant force, capable of subjugating entire civilizations in a matter of hours. And yet here they were, fighting for survival against a single human vessel. "We need a way out," Caleb said, his voice low. "Something to turn the tide." Mara's eyes flicked to the radar screen, narrowing in concentration. "There," she said, pointing. "An asteroid field. If we can get there, we might be able to lose them." It was a risky move. The asteroid field was dense and treacherous, a labyrinth of jagged rock and tumbling debris. But it was their only hope. "Set a course. Full throttle," Caleb ordered. Mara nodded, her hands flying over the controls, and the ship lurched forward as they raced toward the asteroid field. The Ascendant ships followed, their engines roaring as they pursued with lethal precision. Caleb's heart pounded in his chest as they dove into the field. The massive asteroids loomed ahead like dark giants, their surfaces dotted with craters and fractures. Caleb swerved the ship expertly, narrowly avoiding a massive rock that hurtled past them, its trajectory erratic. The ship jerked and rocked with the impact of smaller debris striking their shields, but they kept moving, pushing forward with all the speed they could muster. "Hold tight," Caleb warned as they weaved through the massive stones, barely squeezing between them as the Ascendant ships closed in behind them. It was a dance of death, each turn and twist an act of desperate survival. The Ascendants were relentless, but Caleb was determined. They were not going to die here, not today. Not until they had something to show for their struggle. Then something strange happened. As they approached the center of the asteroid field, the ship's sensors picked up a faint, unfamiliar signal, a blip on the radar that didn't belong to either them or the Ascendants. "Do you see that?" Caleb asked, glancing at Mara. She nodded, her brow furrowed. "It's too faint. Could be an old satellite, or it could be something else. We should investigate." They banked the ship toward the signal, pushing through the asteroid field with a mixture of trepidation and curiosity. The deeper they went, the more intense the signal became, until it led them to a hidden structure, an ancient outpost, its surface half buried by debris but still surprisingly intact. "Is this another human facility?" Mara asked, her voice a mix of disbelief and hope. "I don't know," Caleb said, "but we can't ignore it. This could be another piece of the puzzle." They docked at the station, its surface rough and worn by the passage of time, but its systems still operational. Caleb and Mara suited up, preparing to board the outpost and investigate its secrets. As they stepped out onto the cold metallic surface, the silence was deafening. The wind from the asteroid field whistled faintly as it grazed the station's exterior. Inside, the outpost was dark, the lights flickering intermittently. Their boots echoed on the metal floor as they explored the forgotten corridors, the scent of ancient machinery and decay filling the air. It wasn't long before they discovered the control room. A large console covered in dust and grime sat in the center of the room, and as Mara approached it, the screen flickered to life. "Ancient human technology," she muttered under her breath. "This is from before the exile protocol, before the war." "Let's see what it has to offer," Caleb said. As Mara worked to bring the systems online, Caleb studied the surroundings. The outpost looked like it had been abandoned for centuries, yet the technology here was far beyond anything they had on their ship. This was a relic of a forgotten age, an age when humanity had been a dominant force in the galaxy. With a sudden hum, the console lit up, and a voice crackled through the speakers. It was distorted, as though the transmission had been recorded long ago. "To any survivors of the human race," the voice said, its tone echoing with an urgency long past. "This is the Exodus Protocol. If you are hearing this message, then the worst has happened. The Ascendants have succeeded in their eradication of our people, but there is still hope. The Horizon device was not just a weapon, it was a key to the true power we once held. Find the remaining sites, activate the protocols, and humanity will rise again." The message cut off abruptly, and the station went silent. The battle unfolded in a series of brutal, lightning-fast strikes. The human fleet moved like a swarm of hornets, striking at Ascendant defenses with precision. Lasers and plasma bolts lit up the sky as Ascendant ships scrambled to respond. The human ships, though fewer in number, were nimble and relentless, taking advantage of every gap in the Ascendant defense grid. "Target the command center," Caleb ordered, his voice commanding over the din of battle. "We need to hit them where it hurts." The fleet surged forward, striking at the heart of Aetheris's defense grid with pinpoint accuracy. As they tore through the Ascendant fleet's lines, the air crackled with tension, the battlefield alive with explosions, chaos, and the sound of ships firing on all cylinders. Caleb could hear the adrenaline in his own voice as he barked orders, the rhythm of the fight taking over his every thought. And then they reached it, the Ascendant command center. The massive structure loomed before them, a tower of gleaming metal and glass. It was surrounded by a complex web of shields and anti-spacecraft weapons. But nothing was invulnerable. "We've breached the defenses," one of the pilots called out. "Deploy all forces," Caleb commanded. "Hit them hard, hit them fast." Human fighters surged forward, bombs and missiles lighting up the sky as they took down the command tower's shields. The Ascendants retaliated with everything they had, but the humans were swift, evasive, and organized. With a final thunderous explosion, the tower crumbled, a massive shockwave rippling out from the heart of the city. Caleb stood in the aftermath of the battle, his face a mask of exhaustion and resolve. The Ascendant fleet had been crippled, their command center obliterated. But this was only the beginning. As the human fleet circled the shattered remains of the Ascendant defenses, Mara approached Caleb. "We've done it," she said, her voice breathless with exhilaration. "We've broken their chains." Caleb nodded slowly, his eyes scanning the remnants of the battle. "We've sent them a message. Humanity is no longer something they can erase. We're not just fighting for survival, we're fighting for a future. And we will take that future back." Humanity's retribution was swift and relentless. The Ascendants had underestimated the humans for far too long. Their technology, their culture, and their spirit had been dismissed, and now the Ascendants would pay the price for their arrogance. The first major battle was fought in the heart of the Ascendants' empire, an assault on one of their most prized systems, a planet known as Aetheris, the seat of their power. It was a world of shining cities, advanced technology, and ruthless leadership. But humanity had come prepared. Caleb stood at the head of a fleet of newly formed ships, their hulls emblazoned with the symbol of the Exodus Protocol, a phoenix rising from the ashes. The battle ahead would be a test of everything they had fought for. "This is it," Mara said, her voice cold and determined. "We win here, and we make them realize that humanity isn't something to be wiped away. We're a force to be reckoned with." Caleb nodded, his eyes fixed on the swirling storm of enemy ships ahead. It's time to show the Ascendants what happens when they forget the value of the human spirit. Caleb studied the map, his brow furrowing. Aetheris had been built to withstand attacks from any conceivable force, but Mara was right. They had a chance. The Ascendants had underestimated humanity's resolve, and the Resistance had spent years gathering intelligence and assembling forces. The human fleet, though small compared to the Ascendants' gargantuan armada, was scrappy, resourceful, and, most importantly, united. "We'll hit them where it hurts," Caleb said with finality. "We strike hard, we take out their command, and we take back what's ours. No more running." The day of the assault arrived with all the tension of a storm about to break. The Horizon's Edge and its allied ships entered Aetheris' atmosphere, cloaked in stealth mode, dodging the Ascendant planetary defenses. Caleb stood at the front of the ship, his gaze locked on the viewport as the capital of Aetheris, Valernus, loomed in the distance. The city was bathed in the pale light of Aetheris' twin suns, its sleek spires reflecting the rays like polished silver. From here, it looked like a city that had never known the true cost of power. "All ships, report in," Caleb commanded, his voice firm but calm, the weight of their mission pressing down on him. "This is Nova Vanguard. We're in position. Raven's Talon ready to strike." "All systems green," came another voice over the comms. The fleet was ready. The moment they had prepared for was finally here. Mara, standing beside Caleb, looked out at the fleet as it gathered around them. The small human fleet had been bolstered by ships from the old colonies, veterans from forgotten wars, smugglers, scavengers, and survivors, all united under the banner of rebellion. "Caleb, do you think they'll be ready for this?" she asked quietly, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "They won't have a choice," he replied. "They think they've been in control for too long. This will shake them. We'll remind them that humanity isn't just a footnote in their history." Caleb's voice was low, but there was a fire in his eyes, a promise that no matter the cost, they would win this fight. Humanity had been exiled, erased, forgotten, but now they would rise from the ashes, stronger than ever. They had the weapons, the knowledge, and the will to survive. Mara and Caleb exchanged glances. The weight of the revelation hit them both at once. The Horizon device, the one they had just activated, was not the end. It was the beginning of something much larger. The Exodus Protocol wasn't just a call for survival, it was humanity's last gambit. "We need to find those other sites," Caleb said, his voice grim with purpose. "We need to rally what's left of our people and take the fight to the Ascendants." Mara nodded, determination hardening her features. "If this is the key to humanity's rise, then we can't waste any more time. The Ascendants think they've won. It's time to show them that they haven't." The cold silence of space stretched endlessly before Caleb, Blackston, and Mara as they stood together on the bridge of their ship, the Horizon's Edge. The crew, a ragtag group of survivors and fighters from the scattered human colonies, moved swiftly to their stations, their faces hard with determination. The soft hum of the engines and the quiet beeping of various consoles were the only sounds as they drifted through the dark expanse. But beneath the calm exterior, there was an undercurrent of palpable tension. "We're not just fighting for our survival anymore," Caleb muttered, his eyes scanning the galaxy map displayed in front of him. The map was dotted with coordinates, each representing a key location, a target, a place where humanity's fractured resistance was beginning to gather. The Exodus Protocol was in full effect. A galaxy-wide signal had rippled out from the remnants of humanity's former stronghold on Obsidian, and the scattered human remnants, long forgotten by the galaxy's dominant empires, were now awakening to the call. Humanity was rising again, and with it came the hope of reclaiming a future once thought lost. Mara, who stood beside him, crossed her arms as she studied the data on the screen, her face reflecting the weight of their mission. Her dark eyes flicked toward Caleb, her voice steady, yet carrying the burden of everything they had endured. "The Ascendants still think we're nothing more than a faded memory, but they're wrong. The moment that signal went out, it wasn't just a beacon, it was a war cry." Caleb nodded, clenching his fist at the thought of the Ascendants, the self-proclaimed rulers of the galaxy. The Ascendant Empire had risen to dominance on the backs of countless subjugated civilizations. Their fleets were vast, their technology unmatched, and their military doctrine was brutal. The Exile Protocol had been their ultimate act of control, a galaxy-wide purge to erase humanity's influence in history, casting them into the dark recesses of space. But humanity was far from finished. The Horizon device had only been the first step in a much larger plan, a plan set in motion centuries ago, one that now saw its first real light of day. Mara's voice broke Caleb from his thoughts. "Caleb, the resistance is growing. More ships are joining us every day, and not just from the outer colonies. There's word of some of the older worlds beginning to stir too. The Exodus Protocol is reaching them." "Good," Caleb said with grim satisfaction. "The Ascendants think they've snuffed us out, but they're about to learn that humanity is more than just a few scattered rebels." As the crew worked diligently, the ship sailed toward the heart of the Ascendant Empire, Aetheris, the jewel of their domain. Aetheris was a world of staggering beauty, its cities gleaming with advanced architecture, and its people living under the thumb of the Ascendant regime. It was the beating heart of their power, and it was here that Caleb and his growing fleet would strike. "We've been planning this for weeks," Mara continued, pulling up a holographic map of the planetary defenses. "Aetheris is heavily fortified, but it's not invulnerable. We hit their main defense grid first, and then we move on their capital, Valernus.